She stood in the corner of that marble ballroom, champagne in hand, watching them laugh. They had no idea who she really was. By morning, their family empire would be gone, and the woman they mocked would be the one holding the keys. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the most powerful, and tonight, they were about to learn that lesson the hard way. This is the story of Maya Richardson, a woman who built an empire in silence while others took credit in the spotlight. It's about dignity, respect, and what happens when people mistake kindness for weakness. What you're about to hear isn't fiction. This is based on real events that unfolded in Silicon Valley, where billions of dollars changed hands because of one night, one party, and one family's fatal mistake. Maya didn't raise her voice. She didn't cause a scene. She simply made a phone call, and everything collapsed. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back 3 years, to the day Maya met Daniel Whitmore at a tech conference in San Francisco. She was 32, the founder of a data analytics startup that had quietly revolutionized how companies process consumer information. He was 35, charming, from old money, heir to Whitmore Industries, a conglomerate with interest in real estate, manufacturing, and emerging tech. They fell in love fast. Within a year, they were married. On paper, it looked like a fairy tale, but beneath the surface, cracks were already forming. Maya grew up in Detroit, the daughter of a single mother who worked 2 jobs to keep the lights on. She put herself through MIT on scholarships and student loans, graduated top of her class, and spent 5 years working in venture capital before launching her own company, Cypher Analytics. By the time she met Daniel, Cypher was valued at $800 million, though most people didn't know her name because she preferred to work behind the scenes. Daniel's family, the Whitmores, had been wealthy for generations. His father, Charles, made his fortune in commercial real estate during the 80s. His mother, Catherine, came from East Coast aristocracy, the kind of family that summered in the Hamptons and wintered in Aspen. Daniel's younger brother, Preston, worked in the family business but spent most of his time managing his trust fund and networking at private clubs. When Maya married into the family, they smiled for the cameras, but privately, they never fully accepted her. It wasn't just that she was black, it was that she was self-made, and that threatened them. Catherine once told a friend at brunch, and this is documented, that she wished Daniel had married someone from their circle, someone who understood their world. Preston was worse. He made jokes about affirmative action, always with a laugh, always with plausible deniability. Daniel would tell Maya not to take it personally, that his family just needed time to adjust. But Maya noticed the small things, the way Catherine would correct her grammar at dinners, the way Preston would explain basic business concepts to her as if she hadn't built a company from nothing, the way Daniel's friends would ask her what she did, then look surprised when she told them. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. 2 years into the marriage, Whitmore Industries faced a crisis. Their legacy businesses were stagnating, and Charles knew they needed to pivot into tech to stay relevant. That's when Daniel came to Maya with a proposal. He wanted Whitmore Industries to acquire Cypher Analytics. At first, Maya was hesitant. Cypher was her baby, the thing she'd built when everyone told her she'd fail. But Daniel painted a picture. Together they could scale Cypher globally, merge it with Whitmore's resources, and create something unprecedented. He promised her full operational control and a seat on the board. Against her better judgment, she agreed. The deal was structured carefully. Maya would retain 49% ownership of Cypher, with Whitmore Industries holding 51%. But here's what most people didn't know, and what the Whitmore family definitely didn't know. Maya had a separate entity, a holding company called Apex Ventures, which she'd set up years earlier. Through a series of shell corporations and strategic partnerships, Apex held a controlling interest in several key patents and proprietary algorithms that Cypher relied on. Legally, Cypher couldn't operate without licenses from Apex, and Maya was Apex's sole owner and decision maker. She'd structured it this way as protection, a safeguard in case anything ever went wrong. The lawyers who drew up the Whitmore acquisition reviewed everything, but the paperwork was complex, buried in hundreds of pages of legal documents. They saw Apex listed as a technology partner, but didn't dig deep enough to understand the power it held. Charles and Catherine were thrilled about the acquisition. Finally, they thought Daniel was making a smart move. They threw a celebration dinner at their estate in Marin County. Maya sat quietly as Charles gave a toast about the future of Whitmore Industries, barely mentioning her name. Preston made a joke about Daniel finally making a good investment, looking right at Maya as he said it. She smiled and sipped her wine. 6 months after the acquisition, Whitmore Industries announced a massive partnership with Titan Global, an international tech conglomerate worth tens of billions. The deal hinged entirely on Cypher's technology. Titan wanted to integrate Cypher's analytics platform into their operations worldwide, a move that would generate $10 billion in revenue over 5 years. Charles negotiated the deal personally, with Daniel by his side. Maya provided the technical specifications and sat in on meetings, but when the press release went out, her name was buried in the fine print. The headline read, "Whitmore Industries secures historic partnership with Titan Global, cements position as tech industry leader." Daniel's photo was front and center. Maya saw it on her phone while having coffee alone in their kitchen. She didn't say anything. 3 weeks later, the Whitmores threw a party to celebrate the Titan deal. It was held at their estate, a sprawling mansion with a ballroom that could hold 200 guests. Everyone who mattered in Silicon Valley and San Francisco society was invited. Maya wore a navy blue dress, elegant but understated. She arrived with Daniel, who immediately got pulled into conversations with investors and board members. Maya found herself standing alone near the windows, watching the bay through the glass. That's when she overheard them. Catherine was holding court with a group of her friends, all women from her social circle, all white, all wealthy. One of them asked how Daniel was handling the pressure of the new deal. Catherine laughed and said, "Oh, he's doing wonderfully, though I do worry he spreads himself too thin trying to manage everything, including his wife's little company." One of the women asked what Maya did before the marriage. Catherine paused, then said, "I think she worked in finance or something. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. She's very quiet, keeps to herself. Lucky girl though, landing Daniel." The woman laughed. Maya felt her chest tighten, but she didn't move. She stood there, glass in hand, staring out at the dark water. An hour into the party, things got worse. Preston had been drinking heavily and his filter, never strong to begin with, disappeared entirely. He found Maya standing near the bar and walked up with two of his friends, both of them investors in Whitmore Industries. Preston threw his arm around her shoulder and said loudly, "There she is! The woman of the hour. Well, one of them anyway." His friends laughed. Maya smiled politely and tried to step away, but Preston held on. He said, "You know, Maya, I gotta hand it to you. You played this whole thing perfectly. Married the right guy, got your company bought out, now you're set for life. That's smart. That's really smart." One of his friends said, "Must be nice, right? Going from startup grind to this." Maya's jaw clenched. She said quietly, "I built Cypher myself, Preston. Before Daniel, before any of this." Preston laughed, a loud, ugly sound. He said, Sure, but let's be real. You didn't get to this level on your own. Nobody does. You had help, whether you want to admit it or not." He gestured around the room. "This is Whitmore money, Whitmore connections. You should be grateful." Maya felt every eye in the vicinity turn toward her. The conversation around them had stopped. People were listening. She looked at Preston and said, very calmly, "I think you've had too much to drink." Preston's face darkened. He said, "Don't do that. Don't act like you're better than everyone here. You're not. You got lucky, and you know it." Before Maya could respond, Daniel appeared. He put his hand on Preston's shoulder and said, "Hey, come on, let's not do this here." Preston shrugged him off. He looked at Maya and said, "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. She doesn't belong here, and deep down, she knows it." The room went silent. Maya looked at Daniel, waiting for him to say something, to defend her, to shut his brother down. But Daniel just looked uncomfortable. He said quietly, "Preston, that's enough. Not, you're wrong. Not apologize to my wife. Just, that's enough." Maya set her glass down on the bar. She didn't say a word. She walked out of the ballroom, through the foyer and out the front door. Nobody stopped her. How would you feel if you were in Maya's position right now? If your own family, the people who were supposed to support you, humiliated you in front of everyone you knew. Would you have walked away, or would you have said something right there? Think about that. Maya sat in her car in the circular driveway for 20 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at the lit windows of the mansion. She could hear the faint sound of music and laughter. They were still celebrating. She picked up her phone and called her attorney, a woman named Lisa Chen, who'd been with her since the early days of Cypher. Lisa answered on the second ring. Maya said, "I need you to pull the Titan contract and every document related to the Whitmore acquisition of Cypher. I need them tonight." Lisa paused, then said, "Maya, it's 10 p.m. on a Saturday." Maya's voice was steady. "I know what time it is." Lisa heard something in her tone and said, "I'll have them to you in an hour." Maya drove home to the penthouse she and Daniel shared in Pacific Heights. She didn't go back inside the party. She didn't text Daniel. She sat at her desk and waited for the files. When they came through, she spent the next 4 hours reading every word. By 2 in the morning, she'd found what she needed. The Titan deal was built entirely on Cypher's proprietary technology, specifically 3 algorithms that Cypher had licensed from Apex Ventures. According to the terms of that license, Apex could revoke access at any time if Cypher was found to be operating outside the agreed parameters. And here was the key. The Whitmore acquisition had triggered a change of control clause that Apex had never formally approved. Technically, Cypher was in breach of its agreement with Apex. Maya had the legal right to pull the licenses immediately. If she did that, Cypher's technology would be worthless. The Titan deal would collapse. Whitmore Industries would lose billions. She sat back in her chair and stared at the city lights outside her window. This wasn't just business. This was her life, her marriage, her reputation. If she did this, there was no going back. But as she sat there, she thought about every dismissive comment, every condescending smile, every time. She'd been treated like an accessory instead of a partner. She thought about Daniel standing there in that ballroom, saying nothing while his brother humiliated her. She picked up her phone and called Lisa again. This time she said, "Draft a termination notice for the Apex licenses. I want it sent to Cypher's legal team first thing Monday morning." Lisa was quiet for a moment, then said, "Maya, are you sure this will end the Titan deal?" Maya said, "I know." Lisa said, "It'll probably end your marriage too." Maya closed her eyes and said, "I know that too." Monday morning, the notice was delivered. By 10 a.m., Cypher's legal team was in panic mode. By 11, Charles Whitmore was on the phone with his lawyers demanding to know what was happening. By noon, Titan Global had been informed that the technology they'd built their entire partnership around was no longer available. By 2 p.m., Titan pulled out of the deal. By market close, Whitmore Industries' stock had dropped 38%. Daniel came home that night looking like he'd aged 10 years. He found Maya in the living room, calm, reading a book. He said, "What did you do?" Maya looked up and said, "I exercised my rights as the owner of Apex Ventures." Daniel's hands were shaking. He said, "You destroyed us. You destroyed my family." Maya closed her book and said, "No, Daniel, your family destroyed themselves. They treated me like I was nothing and you let them." Daniel sat down heavily on the couch. He said, "I didn't know it would go this far. I thought you'd just let it go." Maya's voice was quiet but firm. She said, "Let it go? Let what go exactly? Your brother calling me a gold digger in front of 100 people? Your mother acting like I don't exist? You standing there, saying nothing, doing nothing?" Daniel put his head in his hands. He said, "I'm sorry. I should have said something. I should have stood up for you." Maya nodded. She said, "Yes, you should have, but you didn't, and now we're here." Daniel looked up at her, desperate. He said, "We can fix this. I'll talk to my family. I'll make them apologize. We can renegotiate with Titan." "Maya, please." Maya stood up. She said, "There's nothing to fix, Daniel. I'm done." She walked to the bedroom and closed the door. 2 days later, she moved out. The divorce papers were filed by the end of the week. Charles tried to sue her, claiming she'd sabotaged the company out of spite, but Maya's lawyers were thorough. Every move she'd made was legally airtight. Apex had every right to revoke the licenses, and the termination had nothing to do with the Whitmore acquisition, at least not on paper. The case was dismissed. Whitmore Industries never recovered. They sold off assets, laid off employees, and within a year, the company was a shadow of what it had been. Preston's trust fund took a massive hit, and he quietly left the Bay Area. Catherine stopped appearing at social events. Charles retired early, bitter and broken. Daniel tried to reach out to Maya several times, but she never responded. If you were Maya, could you have walked away like that? Could you have watched everything burn, knowing you had the power to stop it, or would the guilt have been too much? Let us know what you think in the comments. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Maya relaunched Cypher as an independent company under the Apex umbrella. She'd quietly been building partnerships with other firms, companies that respected her vision and treated her as an equal. Within a year, Cypher was valued at over $2 billion. She was featured on the cover of Forbes with the headline, "The Woman Who Rebuilt an Empire." In the interview, the reporter asked her about the Whitmore deal and what had happened. Maya's answer was measured. She said, "I learned that your value isn't determined by how others treat you. It's determined by how you treat yourself. If you accept disrespect, you teach people that you're not worth respecting. I decided I was worth more than that." The reporter asked if she regretted what happened. Maya paused, then said, "I regret that it had to happen at all. I regret that people I cared about couldn't see me for who I really was. But I don't regret standing up for myself. I'd do it again." She never remarried. She threw herself into her work and into philanthropy, funding scholarships for young women in STEM, particularly women of color. She bought a house in Sausalito with a view of the bay and filled it with art and books. She found peace in the quiet. One evening, about 2 years after everything fell apart, she was having dinner at a restaurant in the city when she saw Daniel across the room. He was with someone, a woman she didn't recognize. They made eye contact for a brief moment. Daniel looked like he wanted to come over, but Maya just gave him a small nod and turned back to her meal. There was nothing left to say. Some people never learn that respect isn't negotiable, that dignity isn't a luxury, it's a requirement. The Whitmores learned it too late, and by the time they realized what they'd lost, Maya was already gone, building something bigger, something better, something entirely her own. This story isn't just about revenge. It's about knowing your worth and refusing to settle for anything less. Maya didn't destroy the Whitmores because she was cruel. She walked away because staying would have destroyed her. And sometimes, walking away is the most powerful thing you can do. Think about the people in your own life. Are there relationships where you're constantly proving yourself, where you're never quite enough? Are there spaces where you're tolerated but not truly valued? Maya's story is a reminder that you don't have to stay in those spaces. You don't owe anyone your dignity. The Whitmores thought they were untouchable. They thought their money, their name, their legacy made them powerful. But real power doesn't come from what you inherit. It comes from what you build and from having the courage to walk away when people try to tear you down. Maya built an empire twice. Once in silence and once in the light. And the second time, she did it on her own terms. So here's the question I'll leave you with. What would you have done? Would you have stayed and tried to make it work? Or would you have walked away like Maya did? And if you've ever been in a situation where you had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your self-respect, how did you handle it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories. And if this story moved you, if it made you think, hit that subscribe button. We've got more stories like this coming. Stories about people who refused to be broken, who stood up when the world tried to knock them down. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Maya Richardson didn't need the Whitmores to validate her. She never did. And in the end, that's what made her unstoppable. Sometimes, the people who underestimate you give you the greatest gift of all, the motivation to prove, not to them, but to yourself, that you were always enough, always have been, always will be. This is the story of a woman who lost everything except the one thing that mattered most, herself. And that, more than any billion-dollar deal, is what true power looks like.